you offer to them this drink, that we complete the circle, that we hold the circle on this planet Earth with this water. Ashe. And so, ceremony and ritual and remembrance is important to us. It's important that we offer an opportunity for us to remember ourselves as beautiful and whole, that we remember ourselves as Black, as African, as part of the African diaspora, as artists, creators, and healers. We show up first. We know we show up first. We know that we are able, capable, and to be generous with one another. And so it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Museum of the African Diaspora tonight. My name is Ashara Ekundayo. I'm an independent curator, and this blatant ceremony is the culmination of a 2-year forum that we've been having online here. And this is the first time that we've done it in person. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to sit in the space together. And 10 days ago, my friend Zanele Muholi said, "I'll come see you. Let's just do it in person." So with that, I want to invite Dr. Elizabeth Gessel here to welcome you to the museum officially, and to thank her and her team for pivoting so quickly to make this happen.
Thank you, Ashara. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Director of Public Programs here tonight, and I'm so happy to have you all here in the museum space, and thrilled whether we had 10 days or 5 days or 2 days to make this happen. So thank you, Ashara. And as Ashara mentioned, this is our program series, Blatant, a forum on art, joy, and rage that we've been having online. And we were so lucky to have partnered with Ashara to present these amazing programs. If you haven't seen any of the other episodes of Blatant, I encourage you to go on our YouTube channel and check them out. They are all beautiful conversations with a variety of amazing artists, all in conversation with Ashara. So please check it out. Before we start, I also want to just mention what's on your chairs. You have a postcard for an exhibition up in Sonoma called Collective Arising, curated by Ashara Ekundayo, and you should also, and Lucie Moma. So please go check that out. Some of the artists are even in this room. And you also have a little square of paper that has a QR code on it. That's our program survey. We really benefit from your feedback about our programs, who's coming to our programs, what you'd like to see in the future. So if you can scan that QR code, you can take a little piece of paper home with you, scan the QR code, fill out the survey. It's really helpful for us. So please take the time to do that. And phone, of course, went away, but I do want to give you a proper introduction. An independent curator, artist, cultural theologian, creative industries entrepreneur, and organizer working internationally across cultural, spiritual, civic, and social innovation spaces. Contemporary creative consulting, she places arts and cultural production as an essential in equitable design practices, real estate development, and movement building. Her intersectional worldview offers both Afrofuturist and radical Black feminist framework to the public sector by centering the lives, traditions, and expertise of the Black women of the African diaspora. She sits on many boards. She does many amazing projects and activities. It's kind of crazy that it all happens in 24 hours only in a day. I don't know how she does it, but she is a treasure of the Bay Area and beyond, mostly Detroit, I guess, everywhere. So yeah, please join me in welcoming the amazing Ashara Ekundayo.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to keep my mask on. And again, welcome you all to this space, to this beautiful museum that is really, there's nothing like this in the Bay Area. There's not a place where Black artists and Black labor and Black creativity is the center of attention. And it is always a delight for me to come into the museum and see the different kinds of exhibitions and the different artists whose work is being really highlighted in a particular kind of way with such care. And so I just want to say thank you to this museum and to the staff of this museum, all of the different interns, volunteers, and all of the staff. If you happen to be a staff member, if you could please stand up and just let us say thank you to you for holding this space. Also, I want you all to pay attention to where we are. Pay attention to the city of San Francisco, to the Bay Area, to the East Bay, and look who's not in the room. And so it's very difficult for me to be able to come into this room tonight and see the majority of the people in this room be Black. But often we walk into art institutions where Black art is being shown and exhibited, and the room does not look like this room looks tonight. So this is a beautiful mixed room, and I want to honor that, and I want to set intention that we each turn to each other and turn to our community and bring children into museums. I want to honor my young son who is sitting here today. One day, I don't ever want to go to any more poetry readings, film festivals, or any of, but maybe that doesn't make here he is sitting here at 30. Because artists begat artists, right? Creative people encourage children. Children see, they don't know what you tell them. They see. So please think about that, about who you can bring into this art sector world, which is very narrow. It's very narrow. I want to introduce you to my friend Zanele Muholi tonight. There's so many long and just exploratory bios. I'm going to read one of the ones tonight because we're going to have an opportunity to talk with them. And I want to encourage you all to think about your questions. We're going to have time for Q&A. There are also people who are watching live stream on Zoom, and I encourage you to put your questions into chat, and someone will read them. Will hand me the questions as well, okay? Like my whole screen. Zanele Muholi is an internationally celebrated South African photographer and self-described visual activist based in Johannesburg, in Durban, and in Cape Town, and all over the world. Muholi's arresting intimate portrait photography documents Black, queer, and trans identity and history in South Africa. Born in Umlazi township near Durban, Zanele Muholi was raised under apartheid by a single mother. Initially turning to photography as a process of self-healing in the early 2000s, Muholi studied advanced photography under David Goldblatt at the Market Photo Workshop in Johannesburg. In 2009, the budding photographer graduated with an MFA in documentary media at Ryerson University in Toronto. For more than a decade, Zanele Muholi's art has served as a document of the lives of Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and intersex people in various South African townships. Zanele Muholi's Faces and Phases series, started in 2006, is an ongoing project that depicts Black lesbians in portraits that commemorate and celebrate their lives. Presenting the positive images of ordinary Black lesbian women, Muholi seeks to offset the stigma and negative attitudes towards queer identity in South Africa. Zanele Muholi's prints and photography have been found in international audience, featured in galleries and institutions in shows and arts events across the globe. The artist's work has been featured in Documenta, the Venice Biennale, the Sao Paulo Biennale. Zanele Muholi's artworks can also be found in major public collections, including the Guggenheim Museum, MoMA in New York, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art on the other side of this building, the Tate Modern in London, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. I can go on and on and on. Yesterday, they sent me a video from the National Museum in Washington, D.C., as they took the train from Brooklyn to D.C. to see their work as well, gloriously at the front door. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. And this Friday, Zanele and I are hosting a pop-up exhibition, a one-day exhibition at 447 Minna Street. So from 12 to 5, you may come and see some new works, some new prints that are for sale. And we'll talk some more about this afternoon. And then Friday night, we'll have an evening with Zanele Muholi as well as with some special guests. And so with that, welcome Muholi to the Museum of the African Diaspora and back to San Francisco and to BLATANT.
Yo. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming out in loads. I just counted now, we are 56 in the room. Yeah, it's been a long journey to be here. I've been in San Francisco before, and this is my third or fourth time around. Tonight or today or these days, I'll be with Lavinia, who's my right hand, and she's been documenting movement, because it always feels better when I'm with someone from home. When it gets lonely out there, you feel like you speak language, and you get to share what we do in different places. We've known that before bios and stuff, before people read long, I don't know, text. Sometimes I wonder why we do what we do. I can't do 24/7 like Ashara, because my journey as a visual activist has been like painful, going in and out and dealing with much pain and blood and rapes and crime scenes and attending lesbian murders, funerals, etc., dealing with parents who are left behind, dealing with partners who have lost their lovers due to hate crime in South Africa. And I got so frustrated. Like, I was thinking to myself, who am I doing this for? And who is there for me when I have to deal with all of this pain, bloody pain? And therapy, as in speaking to a shrink, was not an option, because I did not like to be timed when I deal with my frustration or talking about whatever that I was going through. And having dealt with those curative rapes, stories, it just put me off sex. Like, intimacy became something else. Like, I couldn't relate, I couldn't connect, which in a way destroyed the personal or intimate relationships. Because in my headspace, I was thinking, how can I indulge in sex or into that space when I just hate a woman whose inside were torn, and which has gone as in like far as women talking about how they've been, forced into doing something, or have bottles of as and toilet brushes in their vaginas. So it's completely put off. And I struggled for years, and because I couldn't articulate that to those people who wanted to listen to that narrative. And I couldn't present, and I then referred many other cases to those who were still like strong enough to deal with them. So now we're talking of like then 20 years of pain of listening to those stories. And when we met with Ashara, we met in Amsterdam so many years ago. And to me, when I met Ashara and the friend that with, I was like thinking, I'm in this dominated space and seeing someone like me. I don't know if we attend film festival.
We were at the Africa in the Picture Film Festival.
So it felt safer. Then we started talking about a whole lot about activism, about about life in general, about the pain of being who we are or who we were back then, just struggling to survive and to maneuver spaces that are often difficult. So I ended up not making sense, but that's how we connected. It is pain and activism that connected us. It wasn't from a sophisticated or posh space. And yeah, but in short, I'm here. I will share with you four things and and also of where I am now.
So while you're scrolling for the thoughts that you want to share with us this evening,
Yes.
talk a little bit about growing up in South Africa. It's not there's the archival footage of what we see about growing up in apartheid South Africa, and then there's the opportunity to speak with
Sure.
who, as a child, went through that whole system, and we know that apartheid was actually based on the chattel slavery system designed in the United States. And so there's a connection, in pain and rage that our tribe shares, uh, and the historical liberation activism that came from the youth, that came from all over, not only Soweto, but came from all over South Africa, that was fueled by young people in the same way in which the civil rights movement in the United States was also fueled by young people and our energy.
Um, when asked or often asked to talk about South Africa and the struggles that people go through, it's like you cannot talk about apartheid USA or apartheid Amsterdam is a city, Netherlands, and all the spaces where people of color, black people are at. So to be fair to me and you and many people, I would just I like to say that it means that one have to be selective with how you present that narrative because you're talking about like 100 years, like how you speak of 100 years of slavery, how it's then interpreted into art education, like the exhibitions that are in different parts of the states. Where you go to New York, you get to read a different narrative. Then you go to Washington, D.C., you read a different narrative. What I want to say with that is to talk about the role of an artist or the importance of art today, how we could deal with that. It's difficult to speak about like 60 million people and their issues. Speaking on documented and undocumented citizens, where people on daily basis are displaced, where people on daily basis are, they struggle to access basic rights, either to education, to medicine, to expression, and where you are having a constitution that other people challenge somewhere somehow. Let's say you have a right to exist as the citizen of the country, exist as a human being in those spaces, exist in a way that your gender fluidity or your existence supposedly to be protected. So just if we were to speak on those layers just of existence, of like why art now and before and tomorrow and forever, or we speak like posterities. So it then becomes a challenge. But I would simplify this for you. South Africa has gone through so many struggles. Now the question is like, where are the artists? And why are some of the artists who are radical displaced in spaces where they're supposed to speak? Why is it sometimes unsafe to speak out? And why lack of support or be given resources to express as per the South African constitution? So I speak as a person who practices art and a person who is active or who's an activist. So now my focus will be mainly on that and how I want to filter the LGBTIQ plus AA, into the picture, this big picture called South Africa, this big picture, called Queer Zone, which is filled with many individuals like me who identify proudly and openly,
Yeah.
as risky as it may seem, like queer art activists, etc., etc. So my focus is on like that, and also how I wish to have, to have many books published by myself, by my colleagues, by my friends that speaks on art, gender, and education, because I believe that that's how we could teach people about who we are as queer individuals than what is happening right now.
Let me just ask you to think about the art work, the music, the dance, the poetry that you were exposed to as a child in the townships of South Africa. Who are some of the artists, or what was the music that you were listening to? Because we know that the various forms of artwork and art making and art labor was very much part of the liberation struggle. So who were the artists when you were a child?
I'll simplify this again. There are artists who are canonized.
Yes.
There are musicians and performers who are part of the canon. And when you speak of South Africa and the apartheid system, there are those that we were supposed to listen to, but then their music was banned. So in that way, whoever that I will say I'll listen to, I'll be wrong. But I will speak on the now and how the present is informed by the past. Who do I listen to now?
Okay.
And why their music makes sense to me now. Say, for instance, my mother grew up listening to Mire Makeba. That's the music we know. But then there is music of Obo Mahlatini, Mahotela Queens and Mahlatini, which might not fit the bill as per how the authors of music or those who decide who should be played and when becomes an issue, you know. I got to know about Hugh Masigela maybe later on in life because those were the people who were exiled and then they came back home after 1990. Your letter, Mbulu, your who else? There are so many people whose music was played abroad that we never had an opportunity to listen to because it was a crime to listen to that music. There were many self-taught artists who use theater as their place, for healing. Then there are many dancers. Somebody brought Latin and ballroom into our spaces. So I grew up dancing and I competed in Latin and ballroom when I was a teenager. So which then
Yes.
became
Wait.
opposite completely.
So Latin ballroom dancing competitively when you were a teenager,
That was safe
growing up,
to
and
do
that was safe to
because
do.
you weren't ruffling any feathers. You were not speaking on a movement that was unjust to so many individuals that I grew up with. So speaking on such apartheid, education, systems that were in place then differ, from each individual. Depends on where you're located. So you're speaking of a South Africa with 9 provinces. You have KwaZulu Natal, you have Mpumalanga, you have Western Cape, you have East London, you have Limpopo. So each and every region has its own language. So we have more than 11 official languages. It's like you come to the S, when you fill the application blank, for a person who come from home would think that English is the much spoken language, whereas Spanish becomes that language. And then when you think of the people who have built this land, are the very same people who speak the language that is only treated as formal when there's a need for work. So, anyways, so I grew up listening to Abu Mahlatini, mostly Umbaqanga, which is music of the province. I grew up as a Zulu person, as a person whose tradition and cultures are invested in that particular community. So, first language is Zulu, and then I understand as much as etc. comes as and the newspaper I grew up reading Ilanga laseNatal, those from Africa, which connected like religion, etc., etc. So now I'm thinking of the very same paper that I grew up reading as a child in my VNEC. That left so many questions of who are the publishers of the newspaper, what sort of content is covered there, and what are the common issues, how are women presented in the newspaper, any element of education that connected with my realities, and what church, became the major part in all of this madness. So now, if this paper is given to us that we buy, we read, we consume as citizens, doesn't have the queer element, it means that LGBTI individuals won't be presented fairly, So there were so many questions that I was stuck with. So now I had to take action and change the whole setup and produce content that speaks to me.
Exactly.
And the people who feel like me or who love like me, So that's what we're doing.
I've heard you many times speak about the impact of what was happening in your life and what was not being seen and not being shown in the media, and whose voices were not being amplified or even honored in terms of women, and definitely not in terms of LGBTQI people, and the impact that had on you becoming a photographer. So, speak a little bit about how it came and you thought photography might be a way out, or a way to protest, or a way to outside of the ballroom dancing, which you said was a safe genre of expression, but that photography is more risky, because you then open the aperture, you turn the lens upon people who were being disappeared, you turn the lens upon people who were being murdered, and you turn the lens upon people who were being silenced. So how did you end up going into photography? Like, how did that happen?
I'm born in the 70s in South Africa. And
use the mic.
And now talking about the media, talking about the music, I'm just reminded now as I'm in the US. We grew up watching Good Times.
Okay.
And listen to this.
Okay.
JJ spoke Zulu.
Okay.
The Jeffersons.
The
That's what apartheid did to us. And it hurt me to think that my first years in the US, I was like looking forward to see JJ. Or maybe his sisters. But every child who's born at home who watched TV as a child was like, good time. Oh man. Yeah, no, it hurts.
We grew up watching it but the impact of United States media, the impact of the stories that were being told, and that era of television as well.
Yes, no, apartheid did that to us. We were fed American films, but nobody held those people who commissioned those projects accountable to ask, why are we watching Black Americans when we have our own people with their own lives, their own narratives in space? Then there was Santa Barbara on TV. So TV hurt me so much. There's a whole lot that came from here that I still question and always wonder, Mr. Blake and yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but besides that, I had to change my own tune and to make sure that I eat what makes sense to me that won't cause any allergies. So that's what I'm doing exactly with my work. To say, I want to see something that looks like me. I want to see people that look like me. I want to engage in a conversation that makes sense to me and inform those who think that we supposedly in need of trash that makes sense to them to hide away the truth of, of our people.
Indeed. Thank you. Let's talk about some of your personal projects. And I know we have a film, a short film to look at
Yes.
as well. So, let's start with the film
Mhm.
and talk about some of the work that you engage in on a regular basis because you are an educator and because education is so important to your artivism, your arts activism, how that has shown up over the years with the scholarships that you have designed and that you support at the various institutions as well as the school that you've the second school, the institute that you've just recently co-founded. Can we watch the first film?
Yes. I was about to say, thanks so much, Elizabeth. I wanted to say that I was trying to find meaning into the work that I do alongside my colleagues. And because in Zulu we say umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, it basically say a person is a person because of others or a village rather. So there's no person who's an islander. I can't like take credit for most that I do. I happen to be there as a messenger of God, and I share the little that is given to me by art lovers and those who collect art. So 25 to 30% of my earnings goes to communities. And I don't take funding. Like I don't exist because of donor funding and I just don't receive it because I think that it would be unfair for me to take lottery money, whereas there's a person who is in need of that funding. In that way, I block my brain from writing proposals. I don't know how to write proposals, so I don't even submit anything. So personal projects are where I feature and which then get to be collected by those who believe that they like or make sense to them. Then then I do philanthropy work like hectically. We spend millions in projects that assist women and youth at home. And then I commission artists. Also, a lot of resources goes into that element. Then there are scholarships. So far, I have 15 young people who are studying photography and film, and 4 of them just graduated last week Friday, and then others they continue. So at home, like to study photography without equipment, it means you spend maybe 100,000 per year, which could be maybe 10,000 USD. Most people that are in the documentary, they become beneficiaries of the institute that I formed in Cape Town. It's called Muholi Arts Institute because I needed to make sure that people do not forget. They could connect the name into projects. And there are fewer spaces like this one in Cape Town, which is a beautiful city like San Francisco or California and other spaces. Um, so I have moved most people from KwaZulu Natal, the region where I was born. It's like moving people from Mississippi to San Francisco type of thing. So I want them to have access to galleries and museums, like how I have access to them. I want them to have all the beauty that is in their country, but then now, due to prejudice and exclusion, people find themselves stuck in zones, the zoning that is prescribed by the other. So we have scholarships. Then I collaborate with some artists that I like, who also likes my work, or who think that it makes sense as well. But all in all, we are producing the biggest Black archive that ever existed in the country. So I don't necessarily want people to apply, because I know competition and applications, how they work. So I pick and choose them based on their talent or skills. So they get an opportunity to meet like-minded or committed human beings like Ashara and many others. So to say, it's very rare for many Black queer people who are talented to have access to resources and spaces that speaks to them. But with a group of people that I work with, it's a mix of people who identify as long as people respect each other. So I try to make sure that whoever has queer allergies leave us, because I have no time to be nursing people's egos who refuse to understand and often tell us how they tolerate us. So this is a big project that is bigger than me. And sometimes I ask myself, what am I doing? Then I work with a group of women, crafters, beaders, who are like producing amazing work and soon to publish them. Because I believe that those who are in academia often exclude the most talented women, because that's how academy works. So I try to bridge that gap between academy, art, activism, and blah, blah, blah. So I've brought together the teachers, and I requested that they identify talented young people in their schools, so they get to see or have a chance to create or produce work that speaks to however feelings they have. And then what you're about to see is a project that I started in the rural Durban, where I lived in the past 3 years, which also had its own vibes. But what we managed to do was to make sure that more than 100 young people get access to art. So we supply them with art materials, a space to create, and we changed or turned the garage into a gallery in our yard, and also like develop jobs for the locals in that area. So some
So
of the
let's watch it.
people who are there are now studying in Cape Town.
Right.
And once they are done, they'll go back to their rural areas to teach as well. So it's like teach one, and that one teach the next, etc., etc. Yeah, because in their spaces, they don't believe in art, and they diss art, and they don't understand that people could survive through that.
Great, thank you. To become the residents.
Will do.
Mhlambe abathatha serious lento mhlambe abanandaba nayo mhlambe bayitshela ukuthi it's a waste of time. Into vele nizayo eyenu akekho umuntu ophosiwe, you understand? What I keep on saying to them is that like art is real, and art heals, and art could take you to places that not your parents, not your closest friends have ever been to. We live in this area called Umbumbulu, and we work with local youth. We provide a space for them to express themselves through art.
Yes, so i-arts, especially in the black communities, into enganakiwe because ukuthi i-arts into yabelungu or other nations, but i-arts is for everyone, you know.
There are some of people who abakhona futhi endaweni abangayithathi serious bazokuthethisa ukuthi uyenzelani le nto because ngeke ikuyise ndawo. I could give testimony for what I have learned, the support that I have received, and also the care that's been given to me by many people who believe in what I do.
Before Bamako came, Umbumbulu was just a place. You know, we had talents, but the thing is, before Bamako came, it was hidden.
People are really, really, really good and talented, and they need to be given an opportunity, and they need our support, they need our love.
Umbumbulu was really important that we impact these people because in the rural areas there's no community centers. Kids go to school, come back, do their own thing, or sit at home.
Arts, no Morningside, all these suburb areas.
I-arts bekuyinto enganakekile phathi thina as ama-artists amancane siyithanda loyo
art futhi uthathe ingqondo yakho ngendlela yokuthi uyayifunda uyihlole ngayo ukuthi yini nokuthi ufunani. It brings out the good life in you.
Guys, it's more than 200 photographs. Okwanceda ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi ngithenge indlu, ngithenge i-apartment eTown, ngibe nemoto yami.
When we moved here, what's fascinating is they didn't know who am I. They still don't know who am I.
Sometimes we look at people, we judge them because we don't know who they are.
I want to be normal and have fun and enjoy being with them, and also let them know that artists are ordinary people who care about others and who are willing to shape the lives of those who want to get somewhere.
Who spend the weekend Nancy coming all the way from Cape Town are there for coordination.
To be honest, this would not have been possible without Bachère the initiative really, and the BAMU is a combination of two, which is Bachère and school, which is BA and MA, and it comes from a series that I worked on some time ago.
Muholi and I are from different backgrounds. I love jewelry and I'm an advocate for education. Muholi is an artist, and Muholi, for them, they are mobile, so any space is space. Really mind.
It's a different tune than my previous approaches to activism.
Working together, we put our heads thinking, what can we do together?
Here I'm talking like a real visual activism, you know, where you say to young people, use your brush, use your canvas, express yourself. Some of them, when they came here, they never had an opportunity to work on canvas. They knew how to draw, but they had to learn, you know, technique in depth.
It was important and significant to give these kids some sort of practical and also a platform for them to know that there's more to this art.
So ngifuna into ezokwazi ukuthi ingikhiphe busy yabonke angifuni ukuwaste i-talent yami.
It's an opportunity for whomever onethanda i-art. Ingane esakhula ethanda i-art kodwa bingazi ukuthi izophuma ibhekephi. At least manje sithole ikhaya.
We put all our energies into this work. We want to see prosper. We want to see our learners / students / artists, like good artists, getting somewhere.
Because there's no way in the township or in any village around KZN I've seen something this beautiful.
we have had a mobile gallery constructed outside our home to make sure that people get a sense of what their kids, what their friends, what their relatives are doing when they come here every Sunday.
With this foundation, we're teaching the parents to listen to their children and also allow them a platform to express.
Abantu, especially la kule village esibiyona, bazaqale bebone manje ukuthi ukubaluleka kwekhono kuyini.
And it is our wish to take this work into another space beyond South African borders.
Being part of this foundation changed my life a lot. It's gave me a huge experience. It's not just an art experience that I got here. I got to learn lessons, life lessons.
Ukuba la kungisize ngokuthi ngithole ithuba lokuthi uthando lwe-art olumina luqale phansi futhi livuke.
Art is our lived experience. Art is a tool for change.
They improved my self-esteem. They showed me that I'm actually a strong person.
You don't need to follow what other people are doing.
Imam Art Foundation is bring those calls to
This picture is named another approach is possible.
They took up that wonderful sparkle out of our lives and they put it in our faces for everyone to see.
It is our wish that it goes beyond just Umbumbulu.
It brings hope, Professor. Even nakubantu abesebelahlekile yithemba nge-art.
Here we are saying that explore your art with your heart. If you love it, do it passionately, without fear of being judged by anyone, because what you put on that canvas matter for someone who is hungry to see something new, to see something beautiful, even if it's not beautiful, but that as long as it's important and matter to you. Therefore, share it without fear of any judgment, because what you do, nobody could do it better than you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to encourage the people who are watching on the live stream, if they have questions or comments, to put them in the live stream and someone will share them with us this evening. So Muholi, this BAMU Arts Foundation, this opportunity that you provided to young people in your community, as you said, they're talented. They needed someone to invite them to explore their talent, to be curious and to be courageous, to try something new. Can you talk a little bit about what has happened with some of those youth? And as we talk about intentional spaces and building containers for young people and for adults as well, to be artists, and how it's come full circle for them to now be part of artist residencies and instructors themselves.
That was in KwaZulu-Natal, and the common city or known city is Durban, like Durban, but with a P. And then we've now since moved to this. This happened during the heavy COVID period. At the height of COVID, we worked on that project, and the focus was on rural youth who really did not have access to art space. And then now some of them have since gone to different schools, because they go to township schools where there's no art. They are not taught art. So some of them, I send them to a boarding school so they learn to present their work and also to learn a new language. Some of them are in Cape Town. And in Cape Town, that's where I started Muholi Arts Institute, because there's nothing like it. And they are studying film and photography some. And then those who did not get to the program at school, at the photo school, they are on residency. So far, I have about 6 to 8 artists in residency. So they get allowance, they get housing, they get travel, opportunities as well, which means that they're not only stuck in that particular space where they work, but they get to see other artists work at different galleries, at museums, and they get to interact with developed artists. Yeah, so there's so much going on at present, and we're not limited to one thing. So those who are artists and are painting, I encourage them to shoot and also to film. It's a must. And then all our sessions are documented. So you get to see a piece like this, but then with a different artist or a guest speaker who came to the institute. And then we have exhibitions. We're supposed to have the second exhibition because we started with exhibitions in June. June is Youth Month in South Africa. So in Cape Town, they have First Thursdays. So most galleries in Cape Town will open new exhibitions every first Thursday of each month, which means that for those who are resourced, they get to showcase maybe 12 exhibitions throughout the year. So with us at the Institute, we started First Fridays because then it gives people, enough time to enjoy art and also to process, then to rush back home because they're working the next day. So First Thursdays are good. However, First Thursdays, they're not flexible in terms of attendance because you are here, it's Thursday, you have to go to work and you cannot hop from one gallery to the next in one night because art needs to be processed,
And are the students, they are invited, they're not applying? Is that?
Most of them are the ones because then I have since moved from Durban to Cape Town and I live in Durban, Joburg and Cape Town, wherever the wind moves me. So I'm now in Cape Town most of the time, but I'm born in Durban, and Durban has the most brilliant artists who do not have spaces or access spaces like Cape Town. And Joburg is like the hub of the arts in South Africa, and almost everybody is there. So now that you have a lot of people in Joburg, then we need people in Cape Town. I mean, Black people, Black artists in Cape Town. You have good artists, but then most of them, they come from different places. There was a need to have an institute in which they could feel and feel like citizens or local in Cape Town.
It was funny when, you said they don't know who you are. They, at that time, you were just another person coming into the community to share resources.
Yeah.
And you talking about your job, your ability to take care of yourself as a practicing artist, and what that has afforded you in terms of owning land and having an apartment and having your own car. And these are things that are important to young people. They're important to young people all over the world.
I guess, I want to say it's good for us to develop young people, to develop youth talent and so on. But I'm always mindful of the adults who never got an opportunity because of the apartheid systems in place. So I can't always say youth. So I always pitch women artists as well, because they some of them, they had to give birth, and in that way their careers were delayed. So I always work with women, and there are women that I work with about like 4 to 6 women in my studio in Durban. In that way, they get to earn some money at the studio in Durban.
I remember some years ago, you and I were talking. I was in South Africa, and you were with these women, women students with yours, and we were talking about having an exchange of women artists between Oakland and South Africa with your students. There was a women's photo project that you did in Boston, and
in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, and some of those artists' work you were able to show in Philadelphia, and there was a book created from that project. What was that book called again?
Between 2001 and 2003, somebody special from here was teaching at school at Market Photo Workshop. Her name is Lori Wasilchak. So my early years in photography, she gave me a book by Bell Hooks, Black Looks, on representation. So I felt like that was my first important book that I lived with for so many years without understanding it, because at that time I just wanted to produce. I wanted to produce. I didn't want to read theories. I just wanted to produce work. So then, years later, like us now, she came in Charlottesville. There was a photo fest in which I participated. We reminisced. It was fun. Then she invited me to a residency, and she wanted to know what is it that I would like to do. And I said to her, all that I do got nothing to do with me. It's about the people. The people are the arts. You know, those people with hearts, they are craving, you know, to to produce, but then the spaces are not good to them. So what I did, I said, okay, I may like to come on residence on one condition. I gave her the concept: 10 women creating poetry, music, art, photography. And the project is called Women Mobile Museum. It's online, you could check it out. Women Mobile Museum. In my head, I was thinking, they are working women, they don't get a chance to go to museums. And even like thinking about museum, it's just luxury for them if they earn, the scale, or they don't belong to a certain bracket. So it means that you cannot take $20 and go and spend at the museum or for just entry. It's something else. So I said, we're going to have a museum that is mobile. Any space that is occupied or not occupied, where people are at, will become a museum. So we constructed wooden structures in those spaces, like at a hall or church. And I wanted to make sure that people who are visual impaired had access to art. So whatever object that we use for different artworks that were on show had braille. And it became the most successful project. That was in which I work with Tilt, which was previously known as PPAC, Philadelphia Photo Arts Center, which was headed by Sarah. So the woman that I work with, or person that I work with, is my former teacher, Lori. So she continues with the project. And the participants in that project will be showcasing in South Africa. So speaking on exchanges, speaking on collaboration, speaking on sharing knowledge and ideas. And we still continue. It's almost the same group as per 10. Maybe one of them is no longer there or dropped out of the project, but we continue. And then back at home, we also use the same, approach to how we could involve many individuals as part of the project. With the Philadelphia group, the people were between age 20 to 54. The oldest person in the group was 54. And that's like at that time, she never thought that her work could get anywhere because of the struggles that they faced as Black creatives in America. So I thought that it was very, very important to not to judge people based on their age, as long as they were capable of doing and they were interested or serious about what they had to produce. So Women Mobile Museum, Philadelphia, 2018 till present and forever. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity for people who have been parents, who have been mothers, who perhaps have wanted to be artists, to have that opportunity to explore that part of themselves, and that we continue to create spaces for people to experience what a gallery is, what a museum is, and expand the definition of what that might look like. Before we look at some of your images that you have lined up for us, can we talk about the representation, the fact that you use yourself, your body, as the subject, the majority of the time, that in your commitment to portraiture, that you have also this opportunity of inviting other people to take a gaze upon themselves, upon their society, upon their community, their own household. But how is it that, what have you learned from turning the camera and keeping the camera on yourself, on your body, and on the bodies of Black queer people?
Previously, I focused my energies on Black LGBTIQ people, but I kind of like forgot about me or the person that I am. And for one, because I needed healing, and I discovered that as I photographed many people, it was me being unable to deal with self. And though I'm not that kind of photographer who say, I don't want to be in front of camera, because most people that I've met, they hate to be in front of the camera. They will tell you that it's them. So one had to break that chain of kind of like seeing yourself as on top of other people, using the lens penetrating other souls than to look at you. So I had to deal with me, and I'm still trying to deal with me. And I use anything and everything just to create these images that speaks to me, and in which I share my visual experiences, what I go through on daily basis, and basically to bear in public, because I'm still like seeking for that. That's something that will heal me. And I think that the more I portray myself, I portray myself in different spaces, I learn to kind of like love me and accept all the flaws that comes with my being. Because honestly, sometimes it's so unnerving to look at you. The body changes, the human body changes. As beautiful beings as we are, they are part of us that we don't engage with or that we don't like. So now I've seen, like, looking at the images that I started taking since 2012, my portrait and where I am now, so much has happened. And each and every like visual document has its own history, has its own issue. I failed to do that now. I think we could just go to edit and sorry. Yeah, sorry for that. We want to select them. Select them all then just open it. So now, as I move to different spaces, sleeping, waking up in strange places, facing whatever different vibes, and being dissed and disrespected without projecting, because it's like mostly will be hotels, and my experiences at hotels. It's fine, I'm moving. Yeah. My experiences in hotels and racial profiling and all. Could you please off the light? Thank you. Completely out, yes. Mm. You see them better in the dark. Just imagine feeling and touching and looking. Yeah, I'm waiting. Yeah. Here. I'm sorry. I know what you were trying to do. Anyways, this series is called Somnya Mangonyama. Is one of the most recognized series because one, it speaks on Black Lives Matter. Two, it speaks on the need for Black archive today done by a person on themselves. So it's one thing to speak on the other from a distance. So this is close to home. And I use every material that I have or I have access to in whatever spaces that I occupy. I started working on this project in 2012 and I shelved it for 2 years and I started again in 2014. So I've been working on this. But my early project dates back as far as in like 2000, 2001. Oh, here, these a table mat. You put your hot whatever plate. And as I produced this, I was thinking like visual anthropologists and how they ridiculed or wrote Black histories without people's consent. But then it's not time to mention their names. We know, we've read, we visit museums. And this is what you scrub your body with. All these products and byproducts from Africa. They find their spaces at different homes abroad and they fall under natural, organic materials that we use. This is taken in Zimbabwe, 2019, September. And these are mats that are used by ordinary women in the place. But those women, again, they are not regarded as artists. They're just seen as women crafters. And these women, sadly, because they fend for their families, they sell this to different galleries and museums who then put a top percentage or 100% percentage and sell it to other people. But then we never knew or never asked who they are. And we don't even have books that speaks on why they do what they do. All we know is that they have to support their families. This is a trash plastic where I look at the black body discarded in spaces without a name. I just had an experience at one of the hotels in London, Ryerson Blachère. Walk into the space. First thing when you go to the counter in any hotel, they want a credit card. I don't have a credit card. I have maybe an alternative, but at that time I didn't have a credit card. So it became an issue with the person at the desk saying that, what if something get broken and then you won't have, who will be responsible for that? It's just become dramatic. So I went into my bed room, the hotel room, and shot this using the plastic that covered my baggage. Then the following day we went to have breakfast. So I was like thinking, maybe if it was another person looking at what was happening at that time, even the setup, the sitting at the restaurant of the hotel would have become a big issue. So, and then I pull a piece of hair in my food, and it could have been any other person's hair. It could have been any other person's plate, but I think it's just layered the experience of yesterday when I checked in. And then my head space, I keep on like saying, a lot of Black people do not have access to spaces because of maybe our backgrounds or maybe many things. But then the status part that not everybody has a credit card because it means to some lifetime debt, And then you think like you graduated, but you still owe the state. So there's a whole lot, yeah. This is my London moments, and this piece is dedicated to my mother who worked as a domestic worker. In my headspace, I create these images where I take my mom to London. Now I'm with my mother in San Francisco. Every space where I am, where her spirit lives, she moves with us. So this is dedicated to her. Besta is a beautiful young woman on a Sunday dress. And I use my friend's Izimiak, who is so supportive of this project. Yeah. There's a picture that became one of the 21 icons in South Africa. It's of Nelson Mandela with the mirror. I like the image so much, but I produced this image in Boston when I was on residency at Isabel Gardner Stewart Museum. And I was reminded of the reflection and the meaning of seeing yourself. But most of all, it reminded me of a joke that people in my community used to speak on how our land was sold to the other. So they speak of how Shaka Zulu was given a mirror, and he was so excited seeing himself in the mirror, and he said, "You could take all of this land." Kind of like he was hypnotized. So I don't know how true that is, but it was fun, but so painful at the same time. So it speaks on how shame, out of desperation, how artists give up their souls just for survival. So the reflection becomes something else. You know, I guess one gets so overwhelmed, and you end up with nothing really, because you're just like striving to survive. Almost the same. But you see, I'm looking away and sorry, I'm looking away, I'm looking direct. So in this one, I'm taking ownership of the self. Here I'm using the stepper. Here I have the stepper which covered my front. And then I created the circle. I covered the wall with a black plastic and I cut the round so you'd be able to see my face, or else everything would have been blurred and black. And with this series, I don't paint my face. Other people, they curious and like, we seeing you in your color photo or your physical. I just twitch the contrast in when I process. Yeah. Sheraton Hotel, Brooklyn, 2019, June. This is at the period when the world celebrated 50 years of Stonewall. So I was in New York at that time. And then I just have my own personal issues with hotels. So there was a couple who slept next door when when I was there. I don't know, people just made love for the whole night. So I was like thinking like when maybe a young woman got married and losing virginity, and then the hymen is broken, some type of thing. So the veil, you know, when you have to be seen and revealed. So that's what was going on in my head. I said, these people just got married. And then, you know, the screams and the sound of love making, you never know the race. It's just the screams. So it's just one of those things. Also here, like seeing oneself. This image is taken in Durban, and the pieces of leathers and the camera, and how a friend shared her piece on how she hated the mic that broke her virginity type of thing. So in this one, it's like for me, it's me and the lens and my issues with the lens. But I keep on seeing the same image all the time. And each and every image that I see, it's different to the next, but looking at like minor objects, just minor objects that I use in all of these visuals. Lesotho, January 2018, where I really felt so beautiful. This is after like the whole of 2017, which was a challenging year. And early January, I started teaching, engaging with young women. They were so energetic, and I could feel that they were striving for success and they were getting somewhere. So I taught photography, and with my colleagues who also are previous proteges in my project. And before I leave any space or any country, I try to take something away from those spaces. Instead of buying souvenirs, I capture an image that reminds me of my existence or presence in that space. So this image was taken in Lesotho, and I wrap around my head with my jeans. So that's a jean, it's not a headscarf. And then cheap jewelry from the local shops. And for once, I just felt like somebody. back to the US and Black Lives Matter. So these images happened as like we read about a lot of Black people being killed. So like out of angst and many things, I just keep on producing these images. And most of them, they are named in Zulu, for one, to promote the need of the vernac or local languages or captions in our work, because oftentimes things get distorted simply because the arts world wants to hear a different something, or the curators demands a common language or what they want to showcase. So I guess that we have a responsibility as people who are art practitioners to negotiate that space in which we want to be heard, in as much as we want to hear those who are in positions of power. So this one was taken in Venice, 2019. I was one of the participants at the Venice Biennale in 2019. And everything Italy, we told it has to do with Catholicism. So I just like pulled the curtain and the curtain rope to make this image as a sign of respect for the dead or those that carries us, you know.
Muholi. So
I'll show,
as we
can I-
go through these images, I want
Yes.
to also invite any of you all who have a question to maybe raise your hand, and Elizabeth can bring the mic, or they can come up to the mic. We'll come up to the mic. So we want to scroll through the images, but we also want to leave time for you all to engage, and we want to be mindful of the time that we said that we were going to have this conversation this evening as well. Are there any people who you can make a cue here if you have a question or a statement or any of that? If you do, please say your name, and if you are a practicing artist, please let us know what your art form is as well.
I'll just give you context to this last two. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. So this is at the height of COVID, and people were like worried, and essentials were the key word, So we had to wear gloves, and you had to cover your mouth, and the gloves and the mask were the common commodities that were needed by each and every household. So at the time, I was doing community work, and we're distributing food parcels, etc., etc. So these are some of the materials that we gave to grandmothers and their grandchildren at home. So this image speaks to aphelile, which means something is finished. And you go to the store, they say there are no toilet papers. The masks were expensive. Then now South Africa, some of the officials are implicated for misusing the funds that were meant to be for the protection equipment. Toilet papers. I don't know if people thought there was diarrhea in place or an outbreak. So toilet paper, mask, and gloves were the most, needed essentials. So I just made those images. And then this then comes to almost the current, the present, and my previous project, in which I celebrate my mom, who was a domestic worker. Yeah, so there's plenty. I'll never finish, but I'm ready for your questions. Thanks. I guess people decide could use this mic.
Oh. Okay. Hi, my name is Malcolm Ryder, and this is. Thank you. I have not a long question. This is my first time here. I love this. These are absolutely beautiful images, and what I wanted to know is after these women have had this experience of being photographed and having these images about them and of them created, by a photographer other than themselves, do they then practice self-portraiture afterwards? Do they take over, the experience and the imaging? And if they do, have you seen that they do anything different or specific that you would talk about?
Thank you so much. Cool. I encourage people to do themselves and their families. It's very, very important. It's one thing to feature in somebody's project, in somebody's project, but then it's something else if you come back home and produce work at home and in your community, etc. So one of the basic themes is my home. My home is one of the needed projects that the students are allowed to produce. So to say, start with your mother. Even with the painters, before I started working with them, like I would say, they will come and share the images. I've produced the images of Winnie Mandela, and then I produced the images of the president and so on. And I'll say to them, go back home. Where is your grandmother, who is the same age like Winnie Mandela? Go back to your communities and look for Bishop Tutu. Go back to your community and look for your teacher who taught your mother before you were born. In that way, we teach them basic art history in their own communities, because then it's something else to think that all of us could produce whatever. So with me, I use myself and my body as a simple example to say that you start from nothing and you become somebody because of people that you come across in life or mentors of this world who bless you with something. So in my case, like the images that I'm showing you here are my self-portraits that are produced over a period of time. So I will then say to them, I could find you or even give you extra resources if you were to go back home and document your family or people that your people grew up with. Currently, speaking on that autobiography, I'm working with my nieces who have babies, and I commission them to photograph their babies. So one has a 7-month-old son. So she's been documenting almost everything of that boy since he was born. Then my other niece has twins who are 1.5 years old. She documents them. Also to say that there is home and the public. And in that way, we are producing a family archive. And soon I'll be showcasing with them, but not me doing them. To say to them, give your children the best gift that your mother or myself never had. Let your children look at themselves, know that their mothers love them. It's as simple as that. So same with, I know for most queer people, we come from difficult backgrounds and families where they don't want to hear anything. But the minute we start documenting our families, they start looking at us differently to say, like at least they are capable. But it's somehow challenging, but we're doing it. We're trying to simplify these complexities.
Thank you. Thank you. Come up to the mic. Come on up, y'all. Because it's
sure. Whatever you want. Thank you for this beautiful talk. It's so good to see you back in the Bay, Ashara, and welcome to the Bay again, Zanele. I was really struck in the beginning of your talk how you talked about how so much of your work is characterized by pain. And when I first encountered your work, I think was at the Brooklyn Museum, maybe in 2012 or 2013. And one half of the gallery was all of the portraits that you had done of, young South African lesbians who had experienced violence of various kinds, and then documenting these atrocities that were happening. But then I remember on the other side of the gallery were all of these videos of like a South African lesbian wedding. And also that video being seen of where, as I recall, there was a lot of fucking happening. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is so transgressive, and there's such a balance between talking about the experience of being Black and queer in the world as a sort of struggle between balancing pain and pleasure, like the pain of being ostracized and brutalized in public, and how that is sort of juxtaposed with the pursuit of pleasure and desire in safe spaces where that can happen. So I'm just wondering, where's the pleasure for you these days in your work? And if there's like a pleasure politics to your visual activism.
Thank you. So, and this person who just got up is also a photographer, Dr. Courtney Morris, beloved educator in community as well. And thank you for pulling that. That's one of the blatant questions, is around pleasure and joy. So tell us about your pleasure now, and if there is a pleasure politic, a pleasure principle even, and when's the last time you experienced joy?
It just reminds me of another question that I couldn't answer, but I'll try to answer this one. They said, out of pain, there's joy. I think that it comes with time, and it's a process. I love working with people, and I love working with women, and that's where I find pleasure. And I like to see progress. I like to see something completed, like the work that you've seen done by those young people there. That makes me happy, because in that way, it's like we're breaking all the barriers that say that art is a thing. In Zulu, say into. Into could be nothing, cannot be valued. So it's like now I'm trying to prove it to many people, and also to say to young people and many other people that I work with that it's possible. It is that possible, or those possibilities, that keeps me sane. To know what we started last week is becoming a week later and next month. So my joy is not limited to I. My joy comes with the people that makes it possible, for me to even express. Because in that way, I know I'm responsible, for something to some people, and to say that all these projects are possible. I have a hashtag that say another approach is possible. That keeps me going, to say something got to give somehow. I cannot always be stuck into this pain. Somehow I should rise above, beyond whatever that becomes a hindrance or a stumbling block. I also like to travel, exploring places where I meet like-minded people. That is happiness. Because for once, you don't think of that painful corner or space. Yeah.
Thank you. I know that you shoot wherever you go. So I know that you will be shooting this Friday at our pop-up. So I think we can take one more very short question, but I want to talk a little bit just to let you all know that there is a pop-up exhibition. So Ashara Ekundayo Gallery is having a one-day pop-up on Friday from 12 to 5 at 447 Minna, which is the CAST space, Community Arts Stabilization Trust space, just down the block between 5th and 6th on Minna Street. And so I know you will be shooting in that space. So if you all have ever wanted to experience what that might look like for Zanele Muholi, how they set up, how they shoot, what that looks like. So that's free and open to the public. And at 6:30, we have an evening event with some friends, and where there will be film screenings, panel discussion, perhaps a demo, but it's all emergent, as you all know. This only occurred 10 days ago, so we will see what that looks like. But you shoot wherever you go, yeah. And as you said, it's instead of buying souvenirs, there is this opportunity for you to offer a reflection of the space and the land and where you are. And so there will be a specific San Francisco print that comes from this visit that will become part of the archive that will be shown around the world as well. I see we have short, yeah. You have to come up, and we have two. So this person and Lava.
My name is Eric, and I'm also a local artist. I think I talked to her. Hello? Yes. So my question to her is, since it's a community-based thing that she does, if she's seen any effects on the students, especially male students, in regards to the queer and lesbian population, if there are any changes in the students that she noticed before or after they were into classes.
Thank you. I've seen a lot of change. People come from backgrounds where they don't have access. So now we have a young man who comes from deep rural area where there's no museum. They never had access to basics like a canvas. And yet at the same time, this person is so good at what they do. They use even wooden structures. They could even paint on the floor. Others don't even use brushes. They use their own fingers to paint beautiful artworks. So when I started with them, I had to declare that I was queer, for one. In that way, how they speak to female beings, or maybe they pass comments, they had to be very, very clear. That I said, but I didn't come to them and say, this is how much I'm worth, this is my net worth type of thing that is done by other artists. I just came as an ordinary person, but I had to come out. That's number one. Now the change that I see in them, at first never had that someone that they knew or work with them. It changed big time when they move into the city, from rural to the city. Everything was like new, going to different galleries, seeing a lot of queer work or work done by queer artists, things becoming normal. They still respect like how they were at home. And then we still speak, we eat together. And when I engage or discipline them, it's the same like how I do with anyone. I won't say now because you're specially straight, because you're specially queer. No, work is work. Explain to them, work is work, no, and that's it. Yeah. You wanna say something?
I just want to add something on that. So one of the also came with
you need the mic. You need the mic. Yeah, they can't hear you.
So one of the young people, she was actually speaking in the video. So she came from Umbumbulu in a deep rural area. Muholi took her then to Cape Town. And then in Cape Town, it was discovered that she's not only a good artist, she, through Muholi's, it's not Muholi's context because, it's her talent. She's going to release this year her first album because she's painting and she's singing, and even just thinking about it, it gives me, my hairs are raising because that is the development that is instilled in the young people to say, now you go back to rural KZN where you're coming from and then make the life better for yourself and for your mother, for your child and for your family, and then be that Muholi going back. I just wanted to add on that.
Thank you. Yeah. You have to.
My name is Lavinia Pina. I'm from South Africa. I'm a documentary style filmmaker. I also tutor a lot of young people in very sad neighborhood, and they are also rising up, and we are collaborating, between our young people in Western Cape and the young people in KZN. So that is what I'm doing in short.
Thank you. I didn't want to miss that opportunity for you to talk about your art practice, and Lavinia will be in conversation on Friday evening with Muholi as well. So our last question is from Lava Thomas.
Hi, I'm Lava Thomas. I'm a practicing artist, and I want to thank both of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel very, very privileged to be in this space with all of you. My question is this. You mentioned when you started your self-portraits that you needed to turn the camera on yourself for your own healing. And now it's been, how long, a decade that you have engaged with self-portraiture. And so my question to you is, how has that practice changed you? And healing, of course, is a process. Transformation is a process. But do you feel like you are closer to where you want to be in your own healing through that work? Thank you.
Oh, that's a difficult question, to be honest. I think I'll get there one day, as one tries to heal, then something else comes up. I've realized, like last March or 2022 March, one of the young people who was featuring in my Faces and Phases passed. And they said due to depression, but nobody knows. And then this is as I was trying to think that things are getting better in the community and so on. Like I'm doing me now, I'm doing other things. So it never ends. And then just last month, on the 26th, a group of young people died at a tavern in South Africa. They said they inhaled something. And that broke my heart. I cried for their mothers. I cried for the nation because I believe that something would have been done to rescue those young people not to go to that bar that night. And maybe if they were artists, those lives would have been saved. To find that as a mother, you lose your child because of the lack of recreational facilities in places and maybe sports or art venues where they could find the other side than to just spend the night at a pub or at a bar as young as 13 years old. So that passing of 21 youths affected me somehow, and it happened as I was here in the US. I was in New York. As I was trying to process that, a young person was killed in Ohio. So also that the Jayland Walker young person affected me. As I was still like, I'm trying to say, I'm running away from pain now. I'm in a different zone. But then America is not the best place to heal either. And then Chicago happens. I was like, where to run to now? So I don't know. It will never end. Because then we live in spaces where we can't just like shut down and pretend as if we are zombies or robots. We are human beings. And then your pain, there's that shared trauma that we carry with us that affects us somehow. So then, with that said, when the young people died, I sent some of my crew members because then I always ask the young artists to be responsible. Say you watch news how many of these bad news you share with many people using your WhatsApp then to produce art and reflect on what you just read? What is the role of an artist today at the time of these atrocities? So I guess that until one day we produce or publish as many books as much as possible to learn and teach each other, then to carry on that pain of 911 and without making sense of it, without forming the same ritual as we open these sessions. They're supposed to make us feel okay, comfortable, maybe not. Maybe that's what art does to many people, those who produce and those who consume or love art. So then it goes back to like the same question that the doctor asked: where do you find joy, and so on and so on. It's like difficult, yeah. Then yesterday or early, as I was taking a shower before we left DC with Levin, I was like saying, sometimes I'm doing this because I think I will forget, but I won't forget. Like how this project start, it's like somebody passes or some drama, like some dramatic error happens, then it takes me back. But I told myself that I won't be depressed by it. I won't allow depression to consume me. I won't take medicine to sleep. I'll sleep because I need to sleep. Or I will spend more time thinking, do something else than to be consumed by it. So about 2 years ago, I met someone. I have a lover in the house. I met Jonathan, who spoke to me at the time when I was like almost mad. And I spoke to a stranger, and we met on Instagram. So we've been communicating where I'm speaking to someone in the US, and when something happens and when I'm feeling so down and out and want to be out of this activism, then Jonathan will be there to pick up my call. In San Francisco, I'm in SA. And I'll say all the most painful things that I won't say to a shrink. And then in that way, I found solace from a stranger. And then I just met him for the first time today. So I guess that through strangers or with strangers, sometimes we get to exhale and say all that we can't say to people who are close to us. So Jonathan became that space in which I could say it all without fear of how the person will feel about me. Because I never, not even once have I ever said to myself, he doesn't know me. But then for some odd reasons, he gave me his time, and it is the time that I value, that I appreciate, where I said almost everything, and I was so like frustrated. And he was doing an interview and like, no, I don't want to talk today. And he was so patient with me. So I want to say thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your generosity and for your kindness and for your friendship. I want to share with you one time I remember we were just on the FaceTime. We were just talking, and I asked you about gender pronouns, and you said, "I am they because I do not come alone. I am they because I do not come alone. I come with my ancestors. My ancestors always come with me. That is why I am they." So we thank you. Thank you for your art practice. Thank you for your love and for your kindness and for your generosity and for joining us this afternoon and this evening, wherever you all may be. And in terms of how we talk about Blatant and where it started and where our practice started, Blatant started as a zine. Blatant started, and there is a limited edition zine, and it is downstairs. And so the third zine will be in partnership with Muholi and their work in South Africa. But if you would like to cop a piece of art, please go down to the bookstore on your way out this evening and pick up this Blatant zine on art, joy, and beauty, whereas these conversations are on art, joy, and rage. and what is rage worthy, and what brings us joy is the artist who shows up as first responder, the artist who comes to the party, brings the party, the artist who rescues us and teaches us and reminds us of who we are. And Zanele Muholi, you are definitely a muse and the epitome of that blatant joy. So thank you for your work. And thank you all for joining us.
I wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Sorry. To Moed and Elizabeth and the team and everybody. I mean everybody who works here, who volunteers here. I like to say thank you so much. Sometimes people just need your ears. Sometimes people need your eyes. Sometimes people need to feel. And because of you, thank you for giving us that space to feel again.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming tonight, because making the space doesn't matter if we don't have people here in it with us. We appreciate you all so much. And we would love for you to purchase the zine downstairs. We would love for you to support MOAD, become a member if you aren't a member. Drop $1 or 100 like Chris Rock did in the donation box over there. Come back to our programs online and in person. Come see our exhibitions. We have so much to share with you. So please come and share it with us. And thank you, Muholi and Ashara, for this incredible conversation. Thank you for bringing it together so quickly and for making it happen. Thank you.
Can we have a group picture? May I be with you? I just be here.